JBZ1 here, and today's build is the new improved armor shredder version 1.6. Before you guys say anything about enemy armor damage isn't worth getting in 1.6, it's because you guys are right. The reason why is because they nerf enemy armor damage. But just because they nerf the enemy armor damage, that doesn't mean that you don't do damage with it. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to build this armor shredder version 1.6. Here's what my gear looks like. As you can see, I'm using a 3 Predator and 3 Striker. The reason why I'm using this combination is because the Predator gives you 10% reload speed while it gives you 8% increased damage on assault rifle and SMG damage. And for the Striker, this is what most important one is because this one gives you stability on your weapon, especially when you're using Bullfrog. And this one also gives you increase of enemy armor damage by 10%. Now let's start it with my chest piece. Chest piece can go up to 2003 armor. And the best major attributes I can put on is exotic damage resilience, skill haste, and health. But for this build, I'm picking enemy armor damage because you want to increase your enemy damage, of course, right? Minor attributes not really important. It's just between the ammo capacity and increased skill EXP. Now moving on to my mask. The mask can go up to 1001 armor. And the best choice for major attributes is critical chance, of course, and or exotic damage resilience. It depends which one you like. But for this build, I'm using enemy armors instead. Because of course, you want to increase your enemy armor damage. And for minor attributes, make sure you always have burn resistance. Because a lot of people are going to use this airburst and fire turrets on you. And now moving on my knee pads. The knee pads max armor you can get is 1668 armor. And the best major attributes you can put on it's either skill power or health. You can also put exotic damage resilience because it only gives you 8%, but it's really up to you if you want to choose that way. You want to stack exotic damage resilience. Again, people using like grenades at you, like airbursts and stuff like that, that will reduce like those damages. The reason why I didn't put enemy armor damage because it's not worth putting on because it only gives you 4% enemy armor damage. So I'd rather put more health or more skill power on this one. It's better choice than enemy armor damage. But it's really up to you again. If you want to increase your enemy armor damage, this will increase your enemy armor damage by 4%. And for minor attributes, you always make sure that you have bleed resistance and burn resistance on it. Now moving on to my backpack. The backpack armor, you can go up to 1334 armor. And the best choice again for this backpack is either skill power or health. But for this build specifically, you need stability because Bullfrog will go wild without stability. So this one can go up to 17.50% stability plus the Striker that gives you 20%. So that's you have like 37% stability right there. And again, in minor attributes, make sure you have burn resistance. Try to stack all burn resistance so you won't get one shot by those airbursts. Now moving on to my gloves. The gloves armor, it can get up to 1001 armor. And the best choice for this one is of course critical damage, critical chance, and enemy armor damage. You can remove enemy armor damage on your, depends what weapon you like specifically. But for this build, I make sure I want to increase my enemy armor damage. And I don't have to choose between assault rifle and SMG because those are the two weapons I'm using. So instead of like picking one, I'd rather have like both increased damage on both my weapons. That's why I choose enemy arm damage. And this is like specifically a shredder build. That's why I choose enemy armor damage instead. Now moving on to my holster. Holster can go up to 1001 armor. And the best choice for the major attributes is of course critical chance. You can go with skill haste either. But remember, you can't get critical hit chance if it's not 1.6 item. If you're still using the 1.5 one, instead of critical hit chance, you'll see protection from elite. So make sure you have to find the 1.6 gear so you can able to recalibrate it into critical hit chance. Now moving on to my weapons. The first weapon I'm using is Bullfrog. You can go with lightweight M4 or any M4 you want. Depends what you like. But I'm using a Bullfrog because it has a high RPM. And the talent I'm using is Deadly Destructive. And of course the special uncomplicated one. You can choose between brutal, responsive on this build. But make sure you always have destructive because you want to increase your enemy armor damage. And the next weapon I'm using is MP5 ST. The talent I'm using is Vicious and Deadly and Destructive. You can change those Vicious and Deadly. It's really up to you. Make sure you have Destructive because this build is basically for enemy armor damage. Now let's move on to my weapon talents. Since like you're aiming down the sight, you can now put your stuff in headshot damage. This will really increase your damage. Again, if you're specifically rolled as critical hit chance, you go with critical damage. But everyone's like aiming down the sight now, so headshot damage is really, really powerful. And for the under barrel, make sure don't put any accuracy or stability on it, or you will lose some damage on specific on Bullfrog. And this is my magazine size. Critical hit chance and rate of fire is the best choice you can go. Now let's go check out my attributes. As you can see, I have a low critical chance on my Bullfrog. But which is fine because my headshot damage is really high. And also, my enemy armor damage is 68%. Remember, this thing can go up to 75%. It depends on what weapon you have, the base enemy armor damage, and of course the other one I didn't put one, so that's why it's 68%. But this one can go up to 75% is the maximum you can get. So now let's move on to my talents. The best talents for me to use is on the move because you want to kill one. If once you killed one while moving, you'll get that 50% incoming damage. If you don't like using a pulse, this one's a really good one because it will give you some pulse. But if you're using a fire turret, make sure you have wildfire. And then strike back's one of the best one because once you're down to thing and you're gonna pop combination of critical save. So you'll pop the metagate while you're getting first you'll get this one when you're down to one bar and then you pop this one to get that critical save, right? It's a good combination. So by the time like it gives you nice some skill haste and then you go down if after you heal your med kit and then you went down to one bar again, it gives you another 20%. That should be enough for you to use your first aid. But it's up to you guys, like which one you like. That's a different combination one here. If you're really tanky, adrenaline's like the best one for you. For the skill abilities, I love using the pulse one and booster shot because of course you want to kill them as fast as you can before they can do something to you. Again, it's really up to you which one you like to choose from. There's a lot of varieties to choose from, so experiment your combination and what's best for you. Well, that's all for this build. Hope you guys found this video useful for your future or present build. More tips and builds to come, and this is JBZ1. This is me saying goodbye.